all to another level. Talking about the
As we came to manage money.
What the great resignation is showing is that people are no longer willing to put up.
Yes.
Okay, well, so this week I'm really delighted to have in this episode Harpal Dhatt. She is the kindness chef and also a podcast host and visiting lecturer at the University of Westminster. I first met actually Harpal in a tech network called FemPeak at the time, and which is now rebranded in Peak, although FemPeak is part of a strand that they still have, where she really built that case of kindness as a tool that we can all use to grow personally and professionally. So I thought that her perspective actually on kindness can really add a great deal to this conversation that we are having in this season about employee ambassador. So I've invited Harpal to share her insight, and she kindly said yes. So Harpal, welcome to the Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast.
Thank you so much, Francine. It's a pleasure to be here. And I brand myself as the world's first kindness chef. And I'm also a founder of Kindness Cafes. And I'm really excited that we met through this technology community. And I have an opportunity now to talk a bit more about kindness and the work that I do.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. I love those kindness cafe. I'd love to get to one of those. Where are there? Where are those cafes?
Yeah, well, I'll let you know actually when I'm running another event.
Okay.
Yeah, at the moment it can be virtual or in person.
Mhm.
And I did run an event for entrepreneurs, actually a lunch in July. So I'm thinking of running another one, which if I do, I will invite you to.
Totally. Definitely would love to get to a kindness cafe. This sounds so great. So, for those who don't know you, I know that you talked about you being, the first kindness chef. But for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit more who you are and what you do, actually.
Yeah, so some of my background is I've always been curious about people and business. So I studied psychology and management a long time ago. And then I went on to become a chartered business psychologist with the British Psychological Society. And I lecture in positive psychology and professional and personal development. And I've just, I think it's probably since about 2016 is when my kindness, when I really started actively teaching about kindness. What more would you like to know?
Yeah, how did you end up really focusing on kindness? So that is a bit intriguing, actually, in this world where, it's dog kind of world.
Well, now it's become popular, I would say. Kindness is a bit more, it's a phrase which, people talk about values. I've seen it in people's branding and company branding. But actually, my story began with compassion in 2008. I realized how powerful compassion was, and I wanted to teach leaders and managers about compassion. But although I found it was really powerful and easy, I found it was quite difficult to explain to people what is compassion. And so compassion is when we realize that suffering exists and we want to alleviate that suffering by helping them with what they might need. And after this, I realized I learned about self-compassion. So I was exploring how can we be compassionate to others if we don't have self-compassion. And then I tried to teach leaders about self-compassion, but it was very difficult at the time to explain again what is self-compassion. And it was when I just pondered upon kindness. And I've run kindness cafes and different events where there's even been children, they can tell you, 5-year-old child, what is kindness, draw a picture of kindness. So kindness seems to be the word. It's very simple, the language, which it seems, I don't have to explain what is kindness. So this is where the journey began. And the reason why is that the more and more I work in this area, I realize people are not very kind to themselves. And I've discovered that I'm one of those people, because I was asked by a branding specialist a few years ago, why do you wake up? Nobody else wakes up to do this work. What is it? Why do you do this? And I said, I just do it. She's like, no. So she almost started like an inner surgery prodding me, where then I started to have therapy and learn more about myself. And I realized I am not very kind to myself. And the more people I have the discussions with, I realize this is like a universal thing, that people can be very critical and judge themselves and judge others. And so I believe both are important, but I kind of was angling in this like self-kindness, being kinder to ourselves so that we are kinder to others, but really being honest and realizing I think a lot of people are also in denial, where they think that they are being kind, but they're not very self-aware. Most people do not have self-awareness.
Yeah.
So myself included, I thought I did. I've spent a long time doing this work. So this is what one of my passions are and gives me meaning, is to encourage this conversation and help people. Although everybody knows what kindness is, it doesn't mean it's very easy for us always to practice, especially when people are suffering. This is when I've seen, when we're really having a difficult time. I mean, I think it's very hard then to remember.
Yeah. What would be the simple definition of what that means, being kind to ourselves? What would that be?
I mean, I think it can be like learning how to become our own best friend in terms of the self-kindness. There's so many meanings. I mean, I think although it's very simple, it's almost to be gentle and tender. With ourselves and with other people. But it's not about self-indulgence. It's also about being honest. Kindness could be, it's not to lie. It's also to be kind of clear and being careful how we say to people what we really mean. But if you don't really want to be somewhere, being able to say no, perhaps, in terms of, like, let's say, boundaries.
Yeah, so I love your, this whole concept of kindness, and also what you said earlier, which I'm going to come back to it, compassion, which is a word that I love as well. And I also use that in one of my model called compassionate leadership. But actually, it is very hard, as you say, to explain what compassion is, because people have different words, thought or, idea of what this compassion means. It just feels to people that compassion means that you just feel sorrow for people and do things for themselves, which actually I say, no, that's not what compassion means. But I know that it is very difficult to explain what compassion means. And also sometimes people even placed empathy like highest than compassion, that. So
you read my mind, Francine, there, because I forgot to talk about empathy.
I'm wondering about this as well. So it's so funny that we are kind of on the same level. And I say, no, empathy, is not higher than compassion.
They can be fighting with each other. There is another word, empathy. What does this mean? Explaining that to people. And I think we all need a level of empathy, but too much can lead to empathy fatigue. Also, although people sometimes say compassion fatigue, I would say that's incorrect. We do need empathy, but feeling sorry for people, it's not going to do much. It's not helpful to have pity too much. But compassion is to see that they're suffering and think about how can we help them.
That's it.
Asking them, how can I help you? What is it that you need? A lot of people are afraid of this, especially in the workplace. I had somebody, and I was saying, you should teach your leaders about compassion. He was like, no. I prefer empathy, he said. We need both, but there's a lot of data and science around compassion and how it can reduce burnout and stress.
Yeah, how can we solve these things. So why is empathy seem to be higher than compassion, actually, which is funny. I don't have the answer. I also ponder, and also sometimes I just have the tendency or wanted to change the word compassion, because in some words, in some ears, compassion feels too soft. It feels like some kind of fluffy things that other people do, but not in proper business.
I'd say it's anything but soft. So all these words like kindness, they may be simple and you think they're soft, but actually I've been working on a book for years, which I hope will come out soon. But I think if we look deeply, it's not something soft and fluffy. Mm-hmm. To be honest, to really be aware of ourselves, to know about ourselves, and to be doing our actions out of just wanting to do good. It's not soft.
Yeah.
It requires a lot, actually, to notice, to see other people suffering and to want to help them. So it's upside down, and it has become fashionable, but I think that they are things that we need to explore more, which is why it's great that on your podcast, you are pondering, we're learning together, and we're thinking about how can we explore all these words, which I think are useful.
Yeah. And also, I love the fact that you also say that it starts by ourselves, self-compassion. How can we give something that we are not even aware about or we don't even have? We can't give something that we don't have. Although we tend to say, well, we're going to give that to other people. Having, first of all, to ourselves, whether it's kindness or compassion to ourselves, as well, is very, very hard, because as much as we all are great and wanted to develop, sometimes, as you say earlier, some of us are in self-denial. We just think that we are not compassionate. Hey, see, how I'm giving million to these people, how I'm doing this, and then actually we don't have any self-compassion to ourselves. We come back, we just drink too much, we self-harm ourselves, and all those other things.
Yes, I'd say there's a big denial. Do you know that the grief curve, which is used in change, or the first stage is denial? So I think that people need
Elizabeth
to wake up.
Kubler-Ross, right?
Yes, this one. I think that everybody should just reflect a little bit and explore and get feedback as well, because sometimes we think we're also being kind to others, but we're really doing what we want, not necessarily what somebody else wants and needs.
Exactly.
And so there's a lot to talk about here. I don't know how much we're going to cover in this episode.
Yeah, so let's come back now to to yourself. And actually, what did you want to do when you grew up? When you were kids, were you thinking of all these things, or did you have something very different in mind that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I had no idea about this kindness chef. It didn't exist then. So I have to say, your questions are really good.
Thank you.
Really good questions. So one of the things I remember was I wanted to be an air hostess, which I really don't want to be now. But
no, me too. Actually, at some stage, I also wanted to be a air hostess, which I definitely don't want now.
Yes. So I think it was this kind of glamour of traveling, of exploring, of seeing the world, which I have done without being an air hostess.
Exact.
Where I think, it's quite a difficult, demanding job with all these time zones and sleep. So I think it was this idea of exploring places, which I have done.
Yeah, I think there is quite good commonalities here. It's actually exactly the same for me. I love the idea of traveling, but I will be a very bad air hostess actually. Because yes, it just, and then obviously I got around doing my digital nomad stuff quite a lot of time without being a air hostess. Yes, which definitely. And now you are actually exploring the other realm, so just moving. And after air hostess, anything else that you wanted to do before you got to this one?
Actually, I think I was lost and confused.
Yeah.
I don't think I really knew, and I used to be a bit jealous of the people that knew. I want to be a doctor, I want to do this. I was a little bit open. And maybe the air hostess is also this thing about people, perhaps, and talking to people. I don't remember. There may have been other things, but I didn't have a clear cut idea.
That's okay. That's good, actually. So now let's come back again to this topic of this season, which is employee ambassador, employee advocacy. Now I tend not to say employee advocacy because with some of my American guests, I understood that employee advocacy meant something totally different from them. So let's talk about employee ambassador. So let's say that which problem do you think that you are helping individuals and companies solve when it comes to kindness? And then we're going to get into much more like employee ambassador.
Well, I would say it can help you with everything, but let's start with, okay, so the big one everyone's talking about, like burnout and stress. But when I started to explore about this question, I was thinking it can really help people from disconnection to connecting. And also it can help people, a lot of language now around belonging and inclusion, about how do we, also safety. There's a lot of talk about psychological safety, and effective teams and cultures have this. Also lack of meaning and purpose. So I would say that there are, anything that really happens in a company organization, I think kindness can help with. Perhaps to begin with, is this like fast-paced world, distracted world that we're living in, which is leading to this epidemic of loneliness and stress.
Wow. You are solving big, huge problem. Wow. As you are actually outlining those problems, I say, wow, yeah, those are huge problems, especially the last one that you just say, this loneliness and disconnecting ourselves from, this is like an epidemic, even bigger than COVID, actually. And then people are not even aware of that. Wow.
Because we're living in our own little islands. We've lost this whole community aspect.
Wow. Yes, those are huge problems. So so definitely those are very big problems that we definitely need to solve with kindness. And then, as I was saying, that in this episode, if we just try to focus on employee advocacy, employee ambassador, and how employers can really empower their employees to become their best ambassador, how can they use this kindness or your kind model to do that, actually, to create something a little bit, systematic in their organization rather than just doing here and there? Is there a way of doing that?
Well, with a background of business psychology, a lot of what's different about my work is reflection. So great question, Francine. It's like a lot of the world is doing, busy. We don't know, are we doing the right things? So I've created this model, which is called the KIND model, to help me with teaching about kindness. And so I think this model is very flexible. So if we're looking at it from an employer perspective, a company could use this model, thinking about, so the K begins with knowing. It could start with, what do we already know? What do we need to know? So paying attention to what's their knowledge, skills, and experience. And I like to start with knowing, because it's a place of, information. It's not scarcity. I don't want to say abundance. That's very overused, but let's say it's a place perhaps where we're not starting from zero. So what do we already know? And maybe what do we need to know? And then the second stage is intending, which is what do we need and want? So a company could start to explore about this question, maybe individually. All the employees could think about that and write on a little post-it note. What is it that the company needs, and perhaps wants, and then they could perhaps see what are the main themes that are coming across. So helping to think about intention. So not just doing, but really reflecting and thinking about what is it that we need and want. And also employees can think about this. I think this is quite difficult. We don't really know, you know. It's not an easy thing to solve, but there are easy exercises which can help people to think about this. And then the next stage is about nourishing. Now we pay a lot of attention, like there's a big movement with healthy eating, and maybe not everybody's paying attention and doing this, thinking about nourishing food. I call myself the kindness chef, because what are the nourishing like words and other things that we're putting into our body? So nourishing is to think about what nourishes and energizes the business, perhaps. So this could be to do with income. It could be to do with employee wellness. Like, what are the measures of nourishment in terms of what gives this company energy? So this could also be to do with strengths. And as an individual working in an organization, people can think as well, what nourishes and energizes me? And then perhaps having a conversation with your manager, because managers are not mind readers. They need help. So this can help an individual to be kinder to themselves, thinking about sharing what they want to share in the workplace in terms of nourishment and energy. And then finally, the stage is D for doing. So let's not start with doing, but end with doing. So what can you start to do? And perhaps keep it quite small, these tiny habits, and then, you know, celebrate like what small things can they start to do. It might be that they want to stop doing certain things. Now that they know certain things and maybe the intention is different, maybe they realize that they're not being kind to themselves as a company. And this is a really simple, you know, it can take 4 minutes to do this, 1 minute per question if you wanted to do it really fast. Or it could take a whole day.
Yes.
But just getting
it take a whole year as well.
or your whole lifetime. But really, it may help, this just stopping, slowing down to reflect together. And some of the things that I've seen with companies, they're just so busy. So having these moments where perhaps it's like a collective sharing, coming together to communicate and see what this looks like as a plan. A lot of plans are just really detailed and quite boring and put people off. So when you're talking about, I think, employee ambassador, employees want to be excited about what they're going to be sharing about. It needs to relate to them. So that's why some of the activities or the way that I design things is to be more empowering.
Wow, I love this model, actually. It's very, very good, actually. K for knowledge, and what do we have and what do we know already? I for intention or intending, what do we need, what do we want, and reflecting around that. And we have the N, which is nourishing food. I love that one too. And what energizes us, what our strength, and then the D, doing. And it can be what we stop and what we start as well. I love the model. As you say, it's simple, but it is complete. You know, those are the kind of model that seem kind of simple, but it's so complete that you can use that. And really, as you say, to empower those both managers and the employees as well. And they can both use that in those sessions to, you know, to just know each other.
Yeah, and then I think a culture emerges when we continue to use something. So it has to be perhaps used once a month, or in your team meeting. It could be the end of a team meeting, or in the appraisal, or the end of a weekly check-in. So to create a culture of kindness, or whatever your culture you want to create, it has to become a habit. And you have to make it really simple, because people are not going to go away, I think, and do the exercises. So when you have your meetings, see if they can be more energizing, so that your employees want to be ambassadors. They want to go out and talk about your company and how it's a good place to work. because you listen to your employees and you take care of them.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Very, very, very powerful. Can you actually give us perhaps any example of any company that you might have worked with, whether a small or big one, and how you apply this model and what were the results, or some kind of anecdote?
Well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, so I had, I'm going to share a story about 2 clients during the pandemic, where I ran a kindness cafes menu with them. So,
cafe menu.
yes, and this was an online experience. So it was a lunchtime experience, and these clients were in China during the lockdown, where everybody was working at home and they were not able to meet each other. And some of these people, they couldn't leave their house. And in between our training session, people were being called to be COVID test.
Oh my
the
God.
COVID test live, every day. So very, very kind of difficult, stressful time. And what I was lucky to do was that, how, so say we have a lunch together, we share a meal. This can be very, it's been going on for our whole lifetimes, sharing food together over a table. How food tastes tastier when you're eating with other people.
Of course, yeah.
So it was a lunchtime, and what I was asked to do was run a menu on mindfulness. So I have created a kindness A to Z for wellbeing. The M then was mindfulness, but now I think I've changed it to meaning. But the client asked me about mindfulness. So there was a starter, main, and dessert. And my client said to me, I have a lot of introverts, they're not going to talk, make sure it's only an hour. And but actually we went on for 90 minutes. So I think it's a 90 minutes experience. And I had very short activities to do, where I get people to do just a very short, say, mindfulness, becoming aware of their breathing, thinking about our feelings. I like to teach people about the feelings wheel and increase their feelings vocabulary. So we looked at that, sharing our feelings. And sometimes, so we don't know what we're feeling. We never know the right words to describe feelings. We can have more than one feeling at the same time. And then the main was was a drawing activity.
Okay.
And they had like 1 or 2 minutes where they had to draw themselves as they are, draw yourself with your biggest problem, and draw yourself with your problem solved. And the drawing aspect, this comes from a trauma psychologist or psychotherapist that has spent 50 years doing research on trauma. I can't remember now the name of the book, but I can share that with you after for the notes. And during the drawing experience, a lot of unkindness comes up. I can't draw, I'm not very good. But this is a really quick, like, scribbling exercise, but it's so powerful. It doesn't matter what the drawings look like. Some people are sharing their drawings. And so this was a great way to capture, without judgment, what is people's experience right now, and to be able to share that if you want to. So some people shared it with me privately, and some people shared in the group. And then the last part was about gratitude.
That was the dessert.
Yeah, something sweet. So that was something sweet, was gratitude. And I didn't want to force people, because, forcing, there's a lot of science around gratitude, how good this is for us. And but I said to people, you don't, if there's nothing you can be grateful for, then that's okay as well. And this is when the real kind of juice and meat came out. So it's the power of sharing those stories and what people were grateful for, or if they're not grateful. And that's where I said to the client, shall we carry on? She's like, yes. So people were sharing. And I did this with 2 different separate teams in China. And some of the feedback was, and I also ran another follow-up on self-compassion. So one client said that I hosted a kindness cafe for a team of 30 in Shanghai during the lockdown, and she expertly guided us through a 4-course, because there was a loving kindness meditation at the end, menu of kindness. that saw us draw, talk, and meditate. And we all left the session feeling a bit lighter, brighter, and inspired. And, I won't keep on like it's bigging myself up, I forgot.
That is, but it's so important.
Really, it's not necessarily about me, but I'm creating that space. This is what I like to do, create the space with interesting activities, not too long, not too theoretical, but really giving people, it's this space, facilitated conversation, but slightly different. So the nourishment comes in sharing stories, and we all know how powerful stories are, and also listening to each other, which nobody is really good at. I'm not a good listener. I come from a family of not good listeners.
Your family trained you not to, to be.
But my mum does say to me, "Well, do focus on what did I do that was good?" She says to me, which is probably kindness.
Wow, this is so powerful, Harpal, because wow, I know what happened during COVID time in China, really. Oh my gosh. And having this menu.
Yes.
It
was slightly different. They were doing a lot of yoga and they were drawing things which perhaps may complement this, but they didn't have this reflective aspect. Also, like sharing, you can't share during a yoga class. I think it's this being together and in a slightly different way. One of the other clients was like, we want to send our employees something, but we can't send them anything. That's why they wanted to do this. People remember experiences more.
Totally.
You send them something, they might not use it or look at it.
Yeah. What will be the drinks then? Because we have like the starter, the main, and the dessert. Any drink in this session?
Yes.
What will be the drink?
This varies, but it normally ends with this loving kindness. May I be well to myself, and sending good wishes to the people you perhaps don't like, the people that you love, to yourself. Can you give yourself kindness? To anything difficult that's going on in your life. So normally I end with this loving kindness aspect of wishing yourself well and sending out these wishes to other people.
Wow, that is so powerful. Wow, my gosh. Wow,
there's a lot of science. So scientifically, the loving kindness meditation by Tanya Singer, a neuroscientist, was found to be one of the most effective. Which also was how I learned about compassion back in 2008. And I saw that power when her research came out actually in that same year. So I like to bring people evidence-based practices but in a more fun, interesting way, which is not PowerPoint.
And Tanya Singer, the name is like singer?
Yes.
Singer. Okay. I will have a look at her.
She's a famous neuroscientist, done a lot of research on empathy and compassion.
Okay, wow, that is awesome to know. Wow, cool. I love that actually. I can be discussing about this for ages. So tell me, have you actually worked or come across perhaps an organization where this model would not work at all or didn't work?
Luckily, that hasn't happened yet, but also, I mean, this won't work for people that don't believe in kindness, I think. So if in the beginning they don't believe that kindness is important or well-being, it probably won't work. People have this as values, but it doesn't mean that they always demonstrate them. Like I've worked in the NHS, which you'd think would be a kind environment, but there's a lot of bullying and harassment and things. So you could have a value, but it's not always really in the culture. So I would say that maybe this model approaches applies a bit more to more kind of creative entrepreneurial people that are a bit more perhaps forward thinking, or they could be traditional, people knew in the old days what is kindness. So it's nothing really kind of new.
Yeah. But actually, it's funny because yes, those creative people and forward-thinking people already know that this is going to be good, but people who need it the most are those organizations that are crunching, where, there's a lot of burnout, and those organizations who don't believe in it, that are going to be the one that is where it's needed the most, actually.
I'm not sure that we can help everybody. And then there's the workaholics,
Yeah.
And nothing is good, everything in moderation.
Exactly. Everything in moderation, every single thing in moderation. So what would you say is, the advice for leaders that you may have if people are quite interested to actually start creating a culture of kindness? So where people obviously love to come and love what they do and become also their best ambassador, which is the theme of this season. Any advice for leaders who are interested? Where can they start?
So I would say it starts with
themselves, yeah,
and how they behave and what they believe is important.
Mm-hmm.
So really, if they don't believe in this and it's not important to them, it's very difficult to get other people to start creating a culture.
Mm-hmm.
Around any topic. Now we're talking specifically about kindness.
Mm.
And I would say that to begin by being kinder to themselves and others, by starting to listen more to themselves. So paying attention to themselves as well as to other people. So this sounds really simple, but perhaps this is, we remember when someone really sees us and hears us and gives us some attention. I think we don't forget that kind of experience unless it's like negative kind of attention.
Mm.
So my advice to leaders is to keep it simple. To see if they can pay attention to how they can be less distracting to their employees. So put their phone away, don't look at your screen. Maybe have an environment with less distractions and really give somebody like 1 minute or 5 minutes of attention and listen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That will go a long way. My gosh, if a leader will come and give a 1 minute attention to everybody, I'm sure they will remember that, definitely.
And an employee would definitely become an ambassador because it's how do we feel? So really, can we listen without having all these questions and judgment? So it's a really difficult practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I think nobody can really do, so it's good to be honest, but it's good to try.
Right. Yes.
So really listen, see what this person is telling you. And then the compassionate thing would be if somebody's suffering, asking, how can I help you? And they give you an answer and maybe you can't help with that, but there's something else. But even just asking the question, it doesn't mean you have to solve their whole problems. Just listen and see how you can help, or maybe somebody else can help, or maybe the listening is enough and it helps you to think about this person slightly differently and see how you can help them to do a good job in the workplace. Because at one point, we're all going to go through difficulties in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Every human. So I would say in this fast-paced world, instead of scrolling, stop, look, and listen, almost as you would cross the lights,
Yeah, love that. Stop, look, and listen. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So now let's get to the last part of this podcast, which is all about meaning, money, and movement, which is actually why I created this podcast in the first place, the 3M. So, first of all, what gives you meaning in life, and where do you get your inspiration from?
So I'd say I'm quite lucky that most of what I do, it has to have meaning. So I've always struggled to go to work somewhere and fit into a standard
for the
job.
paycheck.
Yeah, so I like to normally, my energy comes from something that strengthens me. So some of this work around kindness, it's quite fascinating. It's kind of difficult as well to come up with these ideas. But when I speak to somebody like you, and if I add value, then that really makes a difference to me. So it's making a positive difference to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And also for me to be learning. So we do the work that we need the most, is a common saying. So I'm doing this for myself. and hopefully to help other people. And inspiration comes from nature. So I like islands, quiet places, or going for a walk, to be by the river, by water. And also reading, like if you're reading a good book, something that you're interested in.
Yeah. Wow. That
The
is
inspiration.
wonderful. Wonderful. Yes. Just doing all those practices and, being lucky enough. I don't even want to say being lucky enough, because trying to choose meaning is just something that we all have to really look into. Sometimes I know that it may be difficult for some people to just do something that is meaningful. They need the paycheck, but as much as we can, it's good to find meaning in what we do. Otherwise, we're just going to just go sleepwalking and just automate like a robot. And meaning is very, very important, and finding places to get inspiration, like you in nature and walk and reading and all those things. We need to really find something that gives us inspiration. And my podcast actually is like people like you actually give me a lot of inspiration as well. And hopefully some of our listeners who actually download this podcast, this is it. They get inspiration from people like you, variety of people on this podcast talking about different aspect of meaning, and is so empowering and inspiring for myself. Actually, this is a little bit of a selfish podcast for myself. Because I just love to talk about meaning and give meaning to people as well. So inviting some of the most inspirational people that I can see when I'm on a webinar or a workshop or elsewhere, I love inviting them on the podcast to share their wisdom like you're doing. And thank you so much.
And also, yes, we would love for people to have jobs with meaning, but if they don't, then perhaps thinking about what happens when they come home and their time when they're not working, what gives them meaning and helps them, is something for someone to think about.
Cool. Yeah, that's lovely. So now let's say money. I am so generous, and I'm going to give you £1 billion today. So what would you do with the money, and how would you spend your days?
Okay, in the beginning, this is a hard question, Francine. I was like, why are you asking me this? And I don't know what to do. So I would like to create a retreat space on an island for people to come and slow down and refocus and reevaluate their life, which is beyond yoga and these aspects of external practices, or, going to a spa. And yes, I'd like them also to have a garden and to realize about good food, but to have a space where people can come and also be more connected with nature. And also like resources for kindness cafes. I was thinking, imagine if you go into a hospital, there's a space, or in a school. I also work in a university, so there would be resources in these public spaces where I have so many ideas of like resources. There could be a book or some cards or a little corner with a cup of tea, and it could be serving yourself kindness, which I have done at some events. So having resources to do this.
That is awesome. Yeah, see, you can see now where you're going to spend your money.
We find a way.
And trust me, that is going to really go a long way, actually, empowering people with all those kindness cafes and resources. And wow, wonderful. So, and now what do you want to be remembered for?
Well, this question I was Francine. Okay. I put making a small, they're good questions, but okay, making a small positive difference in someone's life for the greater good.
Yeah, it can be a simple thing like that, and just making a difference in people's life. Yeah, that is so awesome. So now, how can people reach you and learn more about you and your work?
So the website is www.kindnesschef.com, And my email is thekindnesschef@gmail.com. And I'm on Instagram at Kindness Cafes. And I have my podcast, which you can find on the website.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, Harpal, oh, it's so much with regret that, we just have to leave it here for today. Thank you so, so much for your time, joining me today on the Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast, and really sharing your valuable insight. I really enjoyed that. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.